This is a history of Liberty Lodge, Masonry in Wilkes County in general. To start off with, the Lodge held its first organizational meetings in 1798. The Lodge was instituted in 1803. Liberty Lodge was chartered in 1804 by the Grand Lodge of North Carolina and Tennessee. Tennessee didn't separate out and become a separate Grand Lodge until 1813. And as you'll note, the Lodge was chartered 4 years after the founding of the town. To provide some perspective on how young the United States was as a country and how long ago 1804 really was, in 1804, the year the Lodge began, Thomas Jefferson was President of the United States. There were two political parties, just as they are today. However, they were quite different. The first party was the Democrat Republicans, and they were for more local control, states' rights. The Federalist was advocated more federal control. Louisiana Territory, which doubled the size of the United States, had only been part of the country for 1 year. Lewis and Clark started out on their exploration of the land west of the Mississippi the same year the Lodge was founded. So obviously the Lodge was founded not long after the beginning of the United States itself. In the beginning, stated meetings were held on or before the first full moon of each month, and that was because people were on horseback. They had to ride into town and ride back home late that night, and the best way for that to be done was when they had the aid of the full moon. Also, they would hold them on the Tuesday of each court week, and that's because most of the members were involved in the town's civic activities. They would be in town anyway for the week court was held. And also it was held on the festivals of the St. John's. No one is sure where the first meetings were held. There's no historical record of where the Lodge actually met in the beginning. The Lodge now meets on the first Thursday of each month. We meet monthly on a regular basis, and that's fairly typical of most lodges in North Carolina. General William Lenore was the first master of Liberty Lodge, and he also was a key founder of our entire area. He was born in Brunswick County, Virginia. He was a Revolutionary War hero in the Battle of Kings Mountain, which was one of the major battles of the Revolutionary War. After the war, he became a general in the North Carolina militia. He laid out the town of Wilkesboro in 1800. He refused to have the town named after him, so it was instead named Wilkesboro. However, the town of Lenore, which is 30 minutes drive away, was named after him after his death. General William Lenore served 2 years as the first clerk of Wilkes County. He was appointed Justice of the Peace. He served in both branches of the North Carolina legislature. During his last term in the North Carolina Senate, he was president of the Senate. He became the first president of the trustees of the University of North Carolina. He was also a Grand Officer in the Grand Lodge of North Carolina. The town of Lenore City, originally Lenore Station in Loudoun County, Tennessee, was named after him. An interesting story is that town's cotton mill and other buildings were saved from burning during the Civil War by General Lenore's grandson, Dr. Benjamin Lenore, who stopped the Union soldiers by frantically giving the Masonic sign of distress. They also being Masons, heeded his sign and refrained from burning down the town. The first sheriff and treasurer of Wilkes County, Richard Allen, was a member of Liberty Lodge. Several founding members were patriots and soldiers in the Revolutionary War. They named the lodge Liberty Lodge to represent their patriotic ideals of independence and democracy. A key concept is Masonry had a strong influence on the development of the United States and its government. One of the main reasons was not only was the founders of our country the major civic leaders and the main Masonic leaders, but also Masonry because it espouses the principles of equality and democracy, gave them key founding principles that they drew on in creating the country. When you think back, the only example of democracy the founding fathers had to look back on was Greece, all the way back to ancient Greece. However, in the lodge, we elect our own officers. We are a democracy. Every man is equal when he steps into the tiled recesses of the lodge. So those key principles of America, of equality and democracy, a lot of the basis for those ideals came from activities in the lodge. And so it's no wonder that so many of our local and national founders were Masons. Other notable members, governors. 2 members of Liberty Lodge became governors from North Carolina. Jesse Franklin was governor of North Carolina in 1820 and 21. He was a U.S. congressman. He was a U.S. senator from 1799 to 1805. Montford Sidney Stokes was governor 1830 through 1832. He was a Revolutionary War POW. He was elected U.S. senator twice. Trustee of the University of North Carolina for over 30 years, from 1805 to 1838. He was also appointed to the Board of Indian Commissioners by Andrew Jackson. Israel F. Pickens was a state senator, congressman, and governor of Alabama. 3 members of Liberty Lodge became Grand Masters of North Carolina. Samuel F. Patterson, 1833 and 4. Richard N. Hackett, 1910 and 11, and the Masonic and Eastern Star Home was built in Greensboro during his tenure as Grand Master. And finally, Dr. Charles Harrison Pugh, 1955 and 6. 3 of the last 5 mayors of Wilkesboro are Liberty Lodge members. Charlie Grant Bumgarner, from 1953 to 1973, mayor of Wilkesboro. Fidel Frazier followed him as mayor of Wilkesboro, was also a member of Liberty Lodge. He was mayor through 1995. Then we had a gap of 4 years, and then Norman Colvin was mayor for 8 years, starting in 2000. Liberty Lodge has had a member in the office of the mayor of Wilkesboro for 52 of the last 62 years. Liberty Lodge was destroyed by fire in 1891. All the records and furniture were lost. The Lodge charter was reissued by the Grand Lodge that year, and that's the charter we now possess and hangs in the Lodge meeting room. Liberty Lodge merged with Moravian Falls 353 in 1938 after the Moravian Falls Lodge building burned down. That building was on the site where the current Moravian Falls Water Office is. After the fire, the Lodge met in a building on Main Street, which later housed G&H Electronics. And at the time, the building was a 3-story structure, but the top 2 floors finally weakened and got so weak they would sway in the wind during storms. And that caused finally the building top 2 floors to be removed for safety reasons in 1930. And at that point, the Lodge moved to the Ferguson building above Parker Electric, shown in this picture, where it remained until 1973. And a unique feature of that building was during that period, because of room constraints, candidates had to wait in the street before they could be brought upstairs for examination and initiation. The cornerstone of the present building was laid in 1970 by Maurice Walsh, a member of North Wilkesboro Lodge, who was then the Grand Master of North Carolina. Rex Brown was the acting master of Liberty Lodge when the building project commenced. We moved into the current edifice in May 1973. Rex Brown was the first master to be installed in the new structure. The Lodge Secretary Room was added in 1991. The Liberty Lodge Meeting Room was completely renovated in 2003 in a joint venture with its sister organization, Wilkes Chapter of the Order of the Eastern Star. Primary features of the renovation was the laying of a mosaic tile as the floor of the main meeting room, and with a red carpet bordering the mosaic tile. Liberty Lodge presented President Gerald R. Ford with a Masonic Bible during his visit to Wilkes County on March 13, 1976. Gerald Ford was the first president to visit Wilkes County. For several years, Jim Cornelius edited and published a newsletter, Liberty at Large, and that publication won the award from the Grand Lodge one year as the best lodge newsletter in the state. 17 lodges have been chartered in Wilkes County over the years, but only 4 are in existence today. And you may wonder what happened to the other 13. Well, a lot of that was the disappearance of the numerous small communities that existed back in the 19th century and earlier 20th century. Most of those lodges and communities disappeared after World War I. Part of that was the Spanish flu epidemic, which greatly restricted visitation and social activities, but a lot of it also was the introduction of the automobile. The average person having an automobile and no longer having to rely on horse-drawn transportation. What that allowed was, instead of small communities being isolated socially and economically, which naturally caused them to have their own lodges, Masonic lodges, instead people drove on into Wilkesboro, North Wilkesboro. So now those small communities sort of disappeared, became part of the bigger communities, and those lodges disappeared along with the communities. Liberty Lodge is only the 18th lodge in North Carolina to reach its 200th birthday. Liberty Lodge fell below 100 members the same year we had the bicentennial. However, we've grown to 117 members today. That's very corollary to what's happened in Masonry in North Carolina overall. We've seen a nice growth in membership statewide, and particularly in Wilkes County, over the last 10 years. Thank you for your kind attention. I hope this presentation has been interesting, giving you a quick, broad overview of the history of Liberty Lodge.